The greatest power you possess is your ability to choose. Join Lowe's Moore as he reveals how you can begin to maximize that power by exploring yourself on the deepest levels and committing to making lasting and positive changes. Get ready to achieve breakthroughs that will lead to accelerated growth and transformation, because you are now tuned in to The Blueprint.
Why they actions contradict the lamb. I'm fellowshipping when I'm with the fam. That's more relations, that's foreign and foreign.
Good evening and welcome back to the Blueprint podcast. Man, I what can I say, man? Let me say this real quick. Man, when I woke up this morning and for the last couple of days between Friday and Saturday, we had this freezing, wind, cold, and of course I had the heat in the house up on blast. I mean, none of us could breathe up in here, man. It was just so dry in the house, man. But usually, to offset the heat in the house, man, and you open up the window a little bit and you get a nice little breeze along with the heat, you could breathe, man. And I woke up this morning, man, and I was drained, man. I was so glad to look over at my phone and hit the weather, and it said 29 degrees. I was like, oh yeah. So I could turn this heat down, man. I need to get out the house. I don't know if you guys felt like I felt, man, but man, it was cold outside. Right. And it made me think of a lot of other places that I could be. Right. That I could, man, where the weather was nice. My brother was up. My brother came from North Carolina. He came up for a birthday party. And I guess it was like 55 or whatever it was in North Carolina. And he hit here, man. And it was like 10 degrees, 12 degrees, man. And then he woke up on Saturday. I know it. I think the only thing when he woke up Saturday, the only thing on his mind was getting out of here. So, man, but it was cold. But hey, man, I thank God that we was able to survive it. We was able to get through it. Man, I continually pray for those people, man. Man, I don't know. I've never known what it was like to be homeless and, and I just felt for and prayed for all those people that was out on the streets, man. I mean, the weather's been a little crazy, but I pray for those individuals, man. I pray that they found shelter and food, man. Yeah. So I'm hoping that the groundhog saw a shadow. I mean, so we can move on. But technically, man, besides these little nor'easters or whatever, not tropical, but Antarctica, whatever the weather is that causes for it to be freezing out there, man. I'm glad that this year was only a couple of days blast, right? We've had a pretty mild winter. I mean, I think we can all agree about that. But I'm hoping that you guys were safe and sound. And again, welcome to the Blueprint. Man, the last couple of weeks, man, it's been, I mean, I had Kim Matthews on and we were talking about, her life and we were talking about the importance of a father. I mean, she has a program called The Father's Heart. Man, we had a wonderful time. I hope, remember the Blueprint, we're on Facebook Live, and we are on Lowe's Moore the Blueprint on YouTube Live, and they stay on. So if you happen to miss tonight, or if you wanted to go back because you heard something and you wanted to hear it again, it stays on Facebook and it stays on YouTube. And if you don't mind, please share. Go to YouTube and share this tonight. Share it with your friends. Go on YouTube and like it. I mean, and if you don't mind following, following the blueprint, I would truly and greatly appreciate that. So without further ado, let's get rolling. I didn't find, I don't know where my little Michael Jordan ball went, but that's my pebble. It's my pebble that I drop in the pond, right? I got a new one. This is a basketball golf ball, man. I said, man, when I stopped playing basketball, I was gonna play golf, and I was gonna get me some basketball golf balls, right? And so I found these basketball golf balls, and I got one left. You know why I have one left? I had a bunch of them, but I had one left. Hey, once you hit one of these, if it ain't white, right, you can't find this thing. So you just wasting your money. You hit this orange ball out there, man, you cannot find it. It's in the leaves, the wood. I don't know where it's at, but I'd be losing every one of these basketballs. This is the last one I have. And so I'm going to drop this. This is going to be my pebble. I'm going to drop it in the pond, right? You heard that? It's a golf ball, dropped it in the pond. I'm expecting a ripple effect of tonight's show. So let's get rolling, man. I want to start out with my book of the week. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the interview. And, I want to say congratulations to, in my estimation. Now, we all have the greatest, who we think the greatest female basketball player of all time is, right? But Maya Moore, and I'm not saying this because she has my last name. I don't even know if we're relatives, but she got game. I had game, right? But she retired. And I mean, I was so looking forward to Maya making a return to the court. But I was speaking to my guest earlier, and I was speaking to someone on the phone earlier about a speaking engagement, right? And that we have to get to the point where, sometimes we have to turn the page and we have to go to the next chapter. So I want to salute, in my estimation, the greatest female player ever, right? And no disrespect to my wife, because she was a great player, right? But the greatest female player ever, Maya Moore Irons. And they got her and her husband. I mean, a terrific story. I have the book called Love and Justice. This is a powerful story. I'm sure you have been seeing this, her mission, her purpose, the reason why she gave up playing basketball, right? Because she felt that there was something more pressing, something more needed, and she had found another purpose, right? And so if you get an opportunity, make sure you pick this up, Love and Justice, from Maya Moore Irons and Jonathan Irons. Man, it's a great read. And then my word of the week. My word of the week is justice, right? I've been hearing this word a lot lately, and we all have been hearing it a lot lately. And it's a word that's so relevant today, is that we need to live in a time of justice, right? We need to think about what that really is when it comes to, I like to think that, is moral rights. I like to think it's fairness, right? I like to think that justice is love, right? It's a very powerful word. We are seeking justice. All things that we've heard during the course of the pandemic over these last 3 years in regards to social justice issues, right? And I'm sure tonight with my guest, we're gonna talk a little bit about that. But that's my word of the week, justice. And then here's my Pierce Harper and Hill Harper affirmation quote moment. Nothing truly change until your mind changes, by Dr. Miles Monroe. Man, if your mind don't change, right? Nothing truly changes until your mind changes. And when I use the word mind, right, I like to say that mind, in my definition, mind is synonymous with heart, right? Because sometimes we can change the way we think, but if we don't change our heart, our mind never changes. So so when you say mind, change your mind, right, means to change your heart. And that's my affirmation of of the week and my quote of the week. And then now here's my music and my movie of the week. Glory. I mean, you know, what can I say? You know, you got these two great entertainers here. Won the Oscar for this wonderful and beautiful song, Glory. I mean, I love it. It's one of my favorite all-time songs, right? And I'm sure everybody at least has a version of it. But you know, John Legend and Common, man, just an awesome job with that. And then my movie of the week is, man, we were watching this the other day, and we were watching Boys in the Hood came on. And you guys know, over the last couple of weeks on the show, I've been talking about the importance and power of fathers, right? And I have to say this real quickly, because I was in the discussion in my men's meeting on Wednesday evening, and one of the men in the meeting, not himself, usually energetic, a lot of energy, just enjoying himself, but he was just seemed to be sad. And towards the end, he apologized for the way he felt. But he lives in Baltimore, and he was saying, "Yeah, I was a little down tonight because, man, I'm just getting tired." Right here in Baltimore, 3 kids got shot running across the street in a drive-by. One of the kids died. Right, and we started to talk about, you know, mothers are there. Right, my mom was there. Right, we find our mothers are always there. Right, the question is, where are the fathers? And if we don't, we need to understand the importance and balance of a father and a mother, right? And we need to know and understand the importance of a father in the life, not only in his son's life, but in the life of his daughter as well. The importance of the father. And so that's why I showed this movie, because Lawrence Fishburne, in this movie, you could see when he took a hold of his son, right? And he said, "Look, I'm your father. You're going to see what happens to your friends because their father's not there." Right. So I thought this was an appropriate movie. You know, took a look at it, the importance of fathers, right? And this is Black History Month. So yeah, I want to focus on fathers and the importance of them. So yeah, let's kind of move forward here. I want to we're celebrating Black History Month this February, and many of you already know that for me, every day is Black History. Right, we just highlighting in February Black History, but every day is Black History, and it's important every single day, not just one month out of the year. So, we you know, starting the next show, I'll show a few Black History moments, and I'm excited about that as we get to share about our history. And then next. I think next we have a special podcast. Next Sunday, I will not be on at 7:00, but I know it's the Super Bowl weekend, right? So the show will be at 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. next Sunday. We're gonna have the show, and then we're gonna enjoy the Super Bowl, right? And I got hopefully a couple of special guests lined up for the Super Bowl. Last year during the Super Bowl, I had Ray Rice on, right? So you guys, you know, hopefully tomorrow or Tuesday, you know, I will announce my guests for the Super Bowl weekend, and we'll talk about the Super Bowl, and we'll talk about football, and we'll enjoy ourselves. And then as we move forward, I want to show this video. Be patient. Right? I want to show this video, and then I'm going to introduce my guest, and we're going to have a wonderful conversation. Welcome, Dr. Jim Bostic. Yeah.
Hey man, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good, man.
Good, man.
Yeah, man. You got quite a resume there.
A few little things. Yeah, we bless God, man. We do.
Yeah. I was looking on there and I noticed that we knocked out Mount Vernon, who was in first place. I don't know what. Come on, man.
You know what? It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, and not because Mount Vernon was not the great program that it was, man. But New Rochelle always had great athletic talent, but they were intimidated by the name Mount Vernon. You guys had dominated so much over the years, man. These guys were just intimidated. So rather than increase the skill level, I had to decrease the fear factor. So when I was able to decrease the fear factor and make them realize that Mount Vernon was no different than they were, and when I was able to get them over that hump, then they realized that they had the capability and was able to go ahead on and defeat Mount Vernon, man, which for them was like unheard of. You guys dominated so much for so many years, man. So that was a highlight of their careers, man. The fact that they beat Mount Vernon, and on the numerous occasions, and I'm just glad that we were able to assist in getting them to the point where they could play without having, the fear factor hanging over their heads. You know about that, man.
Oh yeah, well, we were the cause of the fear. So, but
I know it.
Yeah.
But, guys, when if they never had, and I'm not saying anything negative about any of their previous coaches, but I am convinced that everybody that coaches guys in high school basketball is not necessarily qualified. Some of them are doing it as a second income, and some of it they're doing it, because of they just like the game like a spectator, and they think that they could just go out and coach. And because they might be teaching in the school or something of that nature, they get a job coaching these kids. But the reality of it is so many of our kids are being hurt by poor coaching, and guys that really don't understand the game, and when I got there, I could sense that, these guys, hadn't been taught a whole lot. And, they were operating, as I said, under a fear factor. We hadn't problem beating anybody else, but just mention Mount Vernon and, forget about it. The game was over. We hadn't even, played the game yet. So we had to undo a whole lot of things that, we thought was detrimental to their success. And when we were able to get them past that point, man, then these guys had a confidence level that was unbelievable. They where you saw they were third in the nation, and led the nation in scoring and all of those kinds of things. It wasn't because of any great magic potion that I brought. They had. It's like the Wizard of Oz. When the good witch at the end of the movie tells Dorothy, you could have gone home all along. You had what you needed all along to get you back home. Well, they had what they needed all along, for them to be successful. Somebody had to come along and just bring it out of them. And I'm just grateful that I was able to assist in doing that, and my partner, Nat Harris.
Yeah. And so I want to start a curiosity conversation because you brought that up, right? Because today it seems like, particularly when you as you mentioned coaches, and coaching whatever sport it is, or whether it's entertainment, somebody teaching dance, teaching acting, sports, is more than the acting, the entertainment, and the sports. I mean, you talk about, you know, trying to help them get over the fear factor of Mount Vernon, but the coach is even bigger than that, because helping them get over the fear factor of Mount Vernon can also help you get over the fear factor of how we live our life.
Absolutely.
Because you dealt with young men, whether it be Lincoln Watts or New Rochelle, or in Yonkers, who need that same type of coaching for life. I mean, getting over the fear factor that that they actually bigger than what they think they are, you know, and helping them move forward in life, which is what sports, entertainment, and all these things do. You know, we find that that's our niche.
Sure.
Right. That's something we like to do. And we use those things, those who are coaches or dance teachers or whatever, we use those things to draw kids in so that we can diffuse all the negative stuff that's maybe surrounding us. So talk a little bit about how important that part of coaching is, because there's a lot of, as you say, there's a lot of people not teaching right basketball, but they're not even concerned about life. And so talk a little bit about that.
So first of all, I think the best way I could respond to that, Lois, is by talking about who I was growing up real quick. And I'm a foster child. So my biological mom gave me up at birth. And there's not even a father's name on my birth certificate. So I don't even have a clue what my father's name was or what he looked like. Matter of fact, I don't even know what my mom looked like, but at least I know, you know, I have some reference because her name is on my birth certificate. And I was fortunate, more fortunate than most, because I was placed in a family that had both a father and a mother. And I immediately, as growing up, began to realize how fortunate I was to be brought up in that kind of an environment where there was a father and a mother there. Because there were so many, as great of a mother as I had that raised me, there were things that our dad deposited in us as men, as boys growing up, that my mom would have never did, because it was just not a natural thing for a woman to do or to teach a young boy. And so that's what made me realize that these young guys that are growing up without a positive male role model in their life, many of them, but not all of them, but many of them are doomed to a really hard life growing up. And because they instinctively, you look for a male direction or a male guidance. And so if there's not one in your home, you're going to look in all the wrong places, most likely. And that's what we see happening to so many of our young guys. And so when I was finished playing basketball and decided to go into coaching, I made my mind up that what happens between the line is, for me and for someone like you, Lois, is simple. It's second nature. It's easy to teach. That was the easy part for me. The part for me that was the most challenging was to break these young men out of some habits that they had learned from the street, from other guys, other men that were out doing illicit type of activities. And so I had to teach them how to be a man, and how to accept challenges, and how to accept defeats, and how to conduct themselves in certain environments. And so that was my biggest challenge. And so I realized at that point that if I was going to be a successful basketball coach, I couldn't show up on November the 15th or whenever the first day of practice was And then when the season was over, at the end of March or middle of March, my guys didn't see me again until the next year, because between the end of the season and the beginning of the next season, a whole lot of negative things can happen to these guys. They can, so I stayed with my players. I was an integral part of their life all throughout the summertime, which is why I started that league in New Rochelle and had them renovate that basketball court, because I wanted to have a reason why I could keep my guys together and I could be there to have an influence over them on a regular basis. So I began to teach them about life and how to conduct themselves and how to accept challenges, how to accept defeats, how to accept setbacks, and how to handle success, because sometimes guys don't know how to handle success. So I had to teach them all of that. I had to teach them the responsibility of becoming one day a father, and what that meant, and how they had to deposit positive things into their children, whether they be a girl or a boy. So most of the time I spent with them was not dealing with basketball. It was dealing with growing up, becoming young men. And I was hard on them, because I understood that if I wasn't hard on them, that the streets would destroy them, and the system would be even harder on them. And so I was hard on them. I know there were times when they were not happy with me. When we got into the season, I remember days. New Rochelle has its locker room downstairs, and I remember days standing at the top of the locker room, at the top of the stairs, going down into the locker room, myself and my assistant coaches, and they didn't know we were standing up there. They were down in the locker room, and the names that these guys called me was unbelievable. They were so mad with me because I pushed them to the brink, because I knew that if I didn't break them, life was going to break them as young Black men. So I had to push them to the brink. And they responded in kind. None of them quit. They didn't like it at first, but when they began to see all of those things that we deposited into them lend itself to their success, both on the court and off the court. Simple things like when you win a big game, for example, against Mount Vernon, how do you handle that? How do you handle that success? Do you let it go to your head? Do you get cocky? Do you walk around, or do you remain humble and grateful that, you were able to win that game? And so it was life lessons. I taught them more life lessons, Lowe's, than I did X's and O's inside of the basketball court, because I knew as African American young men, not all of them were, but I knew that life was going to be hard on them if they were not prepared psychologically to deal with the challenges that came at them. And the one thing that makes me more proud than anything else about those guys is not the championships we won, not the national recognitions and all those things that we did, but that they all grew up and became husbands and fathers and have very good jobs and are doing extremely well for themselves. That to me was the success of the coaching that we did back when they were in high school. So to me, it was more than just winning games, because as you know, only a very small percentage of guys will get to do what you do, I didn't, and go on to the next level, or even go and play college basketball for that matter. But life was going to come real quick, and they had to be prepared for life. And so that was my thing to our assistant coaches, Nan Harris and Fiona Ardone, is we had to teach these young men how to be men and how to conduct themselves, how to talk in an interview, and how to accept setbacks, and how to and also how to act, when they're successful. And I'd like to think we achieved a level of success with these young men.
Yeah. Well, I know a bunch of them,
Yeah.
of those young men, and see them now as productive citizens,
Mm-hmm.
which is very powerful. Sometimes I'm just concerned that today
Mm-hmm.
there's basketball being playing like never before.
Yep.
And all types of ways to play basketball, from your high school to AAU.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope that the individuals that are coaching in all these circumstances, because the kids are going from their high school to AAU, and that inside that coaching is a component that you speak about,
Mm-hmm.
which speaks about how do you use this sport, right? Naturally, somebody can work hard and they can achieve their basketball goals. Somebody can work hard, be extremely talented, and achieve their basketball goals,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there's more to life than playing basketball, right? And so you have to think about, like, okay, what if I can't play, right? That, like you say, being that productive citizen you got to get credentialed in something, whether it's vocational or whether it's educational. You got to you got to graduate from school. You got to go to college, or if you're not going to college, you got to get credentialed in something, right? So nobody's gonna let you just cut your hair, without having some credentials, right? So I hope the programs out there are geared more towards, well, I want basketball success, but I want life success ultimately. So I thank you and Nat and your coaching staff for the tremendous job you did with those young men in New Rochelle and even beyond,
Thank you.
New Rochelle. And I want to digress for a moment, because I want to go back to three things that I talk about, or I don't talk about, but the questions I have in regards to, you talked a little bit about family, right? So to you, the importance of family, the importance of faith, and the importance of education. I mean, if you can, expand a little bit more on, your life growing up, with your family, and some of the things that you had to go through, and how your parents stress maybe faith in education.
So I came up in a very peculiar environment, a loving, caring, nurturing environment, but yet peculiar. And what I mean by peculiar was, number one, when I was given up by my mother, I became a ward of the Westchester County Department of Social Services, and then they have to look for some place to place you. And, you usually stay there for about anywhere from 3 to 6 years. And then they place you in either a permanent home or in a residential institution. But I was one of the more fortunate ones. I was placed in the household of a Pentecostal bishop, Bishop William J. Jackson. Now, what most of us in the faith community, we understand how, the Pentecostals are very strict in their rules and regulations,
without a doubt,
and their expectations of you. But in my case, it was even worse, because the people that raised me were so much older than I was, and the other two foster children they ended up taking in. They had 3 biological children of their own, and they would take care of these foster children until they were, like I said, 3 to 5, 6 years old, and the county would come, take them, put them in a permanent home or institution. But they opted to keep me and another young brother, my brother and my sister, not biologically, but they were foster children too. So we all got raised up as brothers and sisters from babies. So that's all we know. And their 3 biological children. The interesting thing was that my father was born in 1897 that raised me.
Dang.
And my mother was born in 1903. And they were born in the Deep South, where education was for them unheard of because they lived on the farm and they had to help, tend the farm and all of that kind of stuff. So my father didn't have an education past the 3rd grade, and my mom not much more than that. So for them, education was the singular, and their faith in God was the singular most important thing in life you could do, is have an education. So they, growing up in my household, they did not play when it came to you going to school. You better not come home with a bad remark or a bad report card or a bad disciplinary report, because that was back when, they could put their hands on you and don't have to worry about child abuse. And so you was gonna get beat down if you come in there with a bad report card, and you might be on punishment for like a month and a half, And so that was the environment I grew up in, man. It was a tough one. We was in church 3 and 4 times a week, easily all day on Sunday. And when you're a child, you don't quite, understand that, because your boys, they're coming up in a slightly different kind of environment in their home, and they out in the street, and they doing this and they doing that, and of course you want to be out there with them, but we couldn't, man, because that's the bishop didn't play, and neither did my mom. The bishop never put his hand on us. He had a way of talking to us and making you start crying. He'll just make you start crying the way he talks to you. Sometimes you would wish he would have just beat you instead of talking to you.
Yeah.
And my mom, on the other hand, she was quick to grab something, a strap or whatever the case may be, and commence to beating you behind if you did something that was out of line. These people did not play. And so I grew up in that kind of environment, and so much so that my friends, and the other thing is, like, you couldn't go outside to hang out with your boys or your partners unless you first, got a Bible lesson. They're gonna sit you down and talk about something in the Bible, So my boys never came to my house because they knew if they came to my house, they was so I had to hang out at my partner's house because they wasn't coming over my house. They were like, "No, man, we're not coming up there. Nah, man, Bishop ain't nah." So that's the kind of environment. It was a loving environment, a nurturing environment, but it was a very strict, disciplined, faith-based, and educationally based household, and those were the point of emphasis. And how you conduct yourself as a young man when you leave that house. You would rather jump off the George Washington Bridge than to have somebody call my mother and say you were out in the street acting a fool. Because they would tell you, man, don't embarrass me when you leave this house. If you embarrass me, it's gonna be a problem. So we were on our best behavior all the time because we just was, we knew what we had to deal with. But the Bible says if you train a child up in the way that they should go when they get old, they're not going to depart from it. Those values that are put in you, it's not going to leave you. It's going to always be there. So as you know, and you too, you had the same thing. I had about 200 and plus scholarships. I could have gone to almost any college in the country. I chose New Mexico State for 2 reasons. One, because my boy Charlie Chris had already gone out there. They were number 4 in the nation, ranked number 4 in the nation at that time, behind UCLA, and I forgot the other 2 schools. And so it was a great basketball school. But I also chose New Mexico State because it was 2,200 miles away from my house. And I figured if I got the heck away from there, I could get away and go buck wild when I left my house. But like I said, when you train them up in the way that they should go when they get older, it's not going to depart from them. So here I am thinking that when I got to New Mexico State University, I could do what I wanted to do, but they was not there with me, but the values they put in me was there with me.
Mm.
And it would not allow me to cross. There was a certain line that I just couldn't cross. And they weren't there to stop me, but it was those values that they put in me. And it helped me to understand that when you put values in your children, and when you teach them certain values, man, and you continually reemphasize those values, they're gonna stay with those children even when they're not with you. And so I took that lesson, Lowe's, with me when I became after I retired from playing and finished coaching at Iona College. I took those lessons with me, and I said, you know what? When I coached, my main emphasis is going to be on values. It's going to be on teaching our young men how to be young men, whether it's on a basketball, whether it's in an interview, whether they're in the mall. You understand what I'm saying? Whether they're just hanging out with one another, because as African American young men, we are easily targeted by law enforcement. We know that. I mean, history has dictated that. And so I wanted to make sure that if my guys ever had an encounter with the law, that they would know how to conduct themselves, what to say, how to present themselves, so that they could walk away not being locked up or beat down or whatever, or worse, God forbid. It was important for me that I taught them those lessons. So I spent so much of my time teaching our guys how to be life lessons. I think there might have been one or two players on my whole team that had a father in the house. The rest of them came from parent homes, man.
And you coached for like 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. So you understand the importance of depositing positive knowledge into the life of these young men. And believe it or not, man, these guys, not only did they receive it, Lowe's, man, but they stayed under me like I was their biological. As hard as I was on them, they always found me when I was down at Community Action. I was down there, the director for many years in Nurshell while I was coaching. They would come and find me. They would always find their way around me, which let me know how important a father was in the life of these young men. And so I made it my business, man, to always be in their life. And very quickly, Nurshell was one situation, but Leakin Watts was a whole nother monster. Because the guys at Leakin Watts, first of all, most of them wasn't from Yonkers, though their campus was on Yonkers and their high school was on Yonkers. They were from the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, and these guys came from some of the most deplorable situations. Some of them came from abusive situations. Again, no fathers in the home, some of them came out of drug-infested homes, abused. A lot of my guys that played for me were on that psychotropic medication because of their conditions. And I had to coach a basketball team, and you can appreciate this, Lowe's. I never had more than 6 guys in practice. Never, for the whole season. And when I got there, I was told that they had played in the residential league, but that the guys always ended up getting in fights and thrown, and so they asked me to come out. I had come out of retirement at that point from coaching to coach Leakin Watts, and I told them I would. And I noticed when I had my first practice, the cottage parents, those are the people who supervise them in the cottages where they live, they would bring them to practice, walk with them to practice, and then they would stay in the gym to help, I guess what they thought, keep them under control. And so the first day that they came in the gym, I said, you guys have got to leave. They said, what? You can't stay in here with these kids by yourself? I said, oh, yes, I can. I said, you guys have got to leave because you're a distraction to what I want to do. And the thing I noticed about them, Lowe's, the guys that were college parents, is when they came into the gym with the kids, if they didn't identify themselves as those college parents, I wouldn't have been able to tell the difference between them and the kids. The language and the behavior that they use. So I definitely didn't want that around the guys during the time I had them. And so I would take those guys and I had to really, you're talking about deprogramming. I had to deprogram them. I had to make them feel special because they come from very abusive and crazy backgrounds. But then I had to discipline them. I had to teach them how to be young men. And I had to let them know that, listen, you don't ever have to say anything to a ref. You don't have to ever say anything to another player on the court. I got your back. If a referee is making a bad call, trust me, you won't have to say nothing. I got that. You let me handle that, and you stay focused to playing the game. That's my job. This is your job. And when I got them to the point where they realized that I did, in fact, have their back, like if the referee blew a big call, I was all over them referees, man.
Yeah.
I was very aggressive when it came to that. And when they saw that, man, they began to realize that, wait a minute, for once in my life, I got a male figure that really has my back. The other thing I did with them, Lowe's, is I had prayer with them before every practice and before every game. And I'll never forget, man, we were playing, what's that school in Elmsford that dominated in basketball for so long? I can't think of the high school now. But we were playing that school up in Elmsford and up at the county center for the championship. And several coaches came by me while my guys were warming up. And they said, you think you got a chance tonight, And I said, well, we're going to see. And my guys, Alexander Hamilton.
Alexander Hamilton, yeah.
We blew them out so badly in the county center, and they won their first section championship with 6 guys. And I'll never forget, man, that one of the guys who was probably the most challenged, and it took me the longest to kind of break him, came up to me after the game, man. He was so excited. And he said, Coach, it was those prayers that did it. It was those prayers that did it. I said, yeah, it was. I said, but you went out on the court and you executed. And that made me feel so good that here it is. And this guy was the most challenged on the whole team. As a matter of fact, this guy was so challenged that one day in practice, he actually physically challenged me. I won't tell you the result of that, but I'll just say it didn't work out well for him.
Well, yeah, he blacked out. Oh man. Oh man.
That's what we did, Lowe's, man. And I was happy for their basketball accolades. I really, really was. But I was more important. I was more happy. I was more excited about the fact that they were now prepared as young men to face society.
Yeah.
That to me was the biggest championship right there was that these guys, because their disposition would have and could have easily gotten them locked up easily. I mean, they were young men that had been treated so hostilely by their parents and others that they were very angry. And you know what happens to an angry young black kid in society. It leads to a problem. But we were able to get them over that hump, man, and where they began to feel good about themselves, good about their future, how they conducted themselves in public, how they responded when people came at them in the wrong way. To me, that was worth more than all the championships that we won at Lincoln Watts. We won back-to-back championships there as well. And the other thing it was, man, is that these guys were going to go on to be, in my opinion, successful young men in life, because we had at least planted the seed in each one of them, and had an opportunity to begin to see that seed begin to germinate and to grow, and to have a positive effect in these guys' lives. That meant more to me than the championships.
Wow. Yeah, and I want to say, yeah, that's to me too. I mean, I saw a number of those county center games you guys played up there, and of course, my father-in-law, and also Mr. Grimes, Lloyd Wallace,
Yes.
worked at Lincoln Watts.
Yep.
Back in the day, and they used to tell me the stories about the young men. I mean, they were just, I guess you now stand on their shoulders.
Absolutely.
And take that torch, pick up that torch, because these young men need individuals like yourself. And they also need people like you. It's interesting. They need people who work there, right? Who understand assignment and purpose.
Absolutely.
Right. It's not just a job making money. And I don't really care about those kids. And I don't want to, I'm not going to paint with a broad brush. Right. Because there are some people there who are there for the purpose, who are there for the assignment, and they want to see, like you, they want to see those kids grow.
Absolutely.
Right. And but there are unfortunately, there are a lot of people there who don't care.
You are absolutely correct.
And to have you, and then to have Mr. Grimes, and then to have Lloyd Wallace, those type of men who cared about those young men. I know you guys have made a difference in their life. Real quickly, man, I want you to know, and we had conversation when we played together back in the day about you being legally blind, right? But I didn't, at your retirement, congratulations on your retirement and we'll talk about the Nepperhan Community Center shortly here.
Sure.
I just hearing your story, you told me, man, I'm legally blind in one eye, I'm blind in one eye. And, I was impressed about the story. So if you can share with us, that process, man, because a lot of people, when I hear this, when people out here hear it, right, and I heard it, I was thinking about myself in your place, right, and how I would have reacted or responded. I like to think you responded, maybe you reacted, but responded to a situation that happened to you. So tell us about that growing up and how you became legally blind and how you move forward on that.
So quickly, when I was growing up, I was not in my early years, I was not endowed with height. I was very short and very, very chubby. In fact, the memory I have of growing up as a young kid with people grabbing me by the cheek because I had big old fat cheeks, all the time. And that was a part of my life for all my elementary school years. And so a lot of times I was the blunt of people's jokes. So I figured I'd find something I could do where I could just go and be off to myself. And so I just took a liking to basketball. So I would just go to the park, play all by myself. And, the guys would oftentimes smack me upside the head and take my ball, the bigger guys. But I kept going back. I didn't care. And then one day, I was 11 years old, and me and my older brother, were coming back from our library. We were walking up a hill. It was in the dead of winter. Ice and snow was all over the ground. And there were some young guys there, and they was having this snowball fight. And so I guess they thought it was a joke. One of them picked up a chunk of ice, and he threw it. And I was wearing glasses. And back in those days, the glasses were not made like they are now, shatterproof and all that other stuff. Those glasses back then was glass. And he threw that chunk of ice, and it hit the glass on my right eye. It shattered the glass, and it ripped the retina in my right eye. And needless to say, I was rushed to emergency. You know, there were particles of glass all in my eye, and they had to do immediate surgery and to get all of those particles of glass out. But the retina was so severely damaged that they couldn't do anything to restore the vision. So I had to wear a patch for a little while, and I was blind, and I knew who did it. The Lord never led me to have an encounter with him because of it. And even after I was old enough and big enough, and I guess in my spirit, I just let it go. I just forgave him. But in the meantime, now I'm short, I'm fat, and I'm blind in one eye. I got a patch, so children can be cruel sometimes. And so I became the blunt of a lot of people's jokes, a lot of the kids' jokes. They used to call me Cyclops and all these kind of, names of one-eyed monsters, and they thought that was funny. But I took it all in. I was kind of thick-skinned in that regard. And I just went on, and it didn't stop me from loving the game of basketball. I would play. I joined the league down the Y, and I'm having one eye. And in my earlier years, I had a hard time adjusting to having, lost sight in my right eye, but I kept playing, and the body has a way of instinctively adjusting to a deficiency in one part of the body. So I began slowly to adjust to the fact that I had one eye. No, other than the kids that I grew up with as a young kid, they didn't, nobody else knew that I was completely blind in my eye. They just thought it was an injury. So one summer, I've grown up a few years now, and I've made the adjustment to my eye, and now I can pretty much see on my right side with my left eye. My left eye had gotten trained to be able to do that, and so now I'm about 5. I'm going to say 8, somewhere around there, 5'7", 5'8". When I graduated in the 10th grade, going into the 11th grade, and in 3 months I went from about 5'7", 5'8". When I came back to Gorton in September, I was 6'5". So and so all of a sudden I went from being this kid that people made jokes about to being, I was no longer wearing a patch. My eye had healed, but it still was blind. And so I walked into Gorton. The kids that you don't see during the course of the summer, my body changed, so like a whole metamorphosis took place in my body. Physically, I just blew up, height-wise, physically-wise, to the point where they say you have growing pains. Well, that whole summer I had growing pains, and my parents had went through big changes, because every time they buy me something, within a couple of weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I had already outgrown it again. And so I walked into Gorton at 6'5". I was the tallest player in Yonkers at that point, one of the tallest in Westchester. And that was the year Gorton dominated. We won everything that year in the county. And then I grew another 2.5 inches to become 6'7.5". And, I went from this kid that was, the blunt of everybody's joke to now being, the MVP in the county and all of that stuff, and all state, all American. And people migrate towards success. When I was short and chubby, and I had one eye, the same people that made fun of us or made fun of me, now they want to be my best friend. I'm 6'7", and I'm the best player in the county. It's like those in the faith community. I always say this when I'm preaching. It was the same crowd that on Monday, said, "Hosanna, Hosanna, our Son of David," and dropped palms down when Jesus entered Jerusalem on the donkey. That on Friday night said, "Crucify him."
Yeah.
People are fickle like that. You know what I'm saying? They're with you when you're on top, but then when things are not going so well, they run from you. So I took all that with a grain of salt. I didn't let it go to my head. I saw it for what it was, but it taught me a lot of life lessons that I was able to not only internalize, but I was able to impart to my guys. One of the things I tell them is, be careful of people who are around you at your highest point or when you are the most successful. Just be on a guard. Be careful of them, because it's oftentimes those same people that'll turn on you the moment things go south for you.
Wow.
And those are important lessons to learn in life, particularly for our guys, because you can get set up by people who you think are with you until you need them the most, or until you go through something, or you don't have nothing to give to them, and then they'll turn on you, and you'll find yourself standing, by yourself and looking around, saying, "Well, where was all those people when I was, on top?" And that's a hard lesson to have to learn. And I learned that lesson very hard growing up, but it taught me, it helped to shape my character and equip me with the information to be able to pass on to the next generation.
Wow.
I said this at my retirement, and I'm done. If the lessons you've learned as a man, a Black man in this country, if you take those lessons and you hoard them for yourself, and you never share those life lessons with the next generation, then what was the point? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're not here to amass success and all of this and not share the knowledge and the things with the next generations, so they don't make the same mistakes you make, that they can step around or dance around those mistakes, because they've been taught and trained how to deal with that based on the experiences that you had. You said we stand on other person. I stood on Mr. Wallace and them's shoulder. I did. And so a lot of the things that Mr. Wallace and them did to achieve success, don't think I didn't, I hate to say it, but in many ways I'm a thief, because I'll steal any great idea that you have if it's going to benefit the people that I'm trying to serve or the people that I'm trying to help. As a pastor and a preacher, we'll take a sermon in a minute and
Yeah.
and make it ours. If it's gonna bless the people that you're speaking to, why wouldn't you share that information with them instead of keeping it to yourself? So growing up for me, man, was not easy. I learned so many lessons on those, going from, being blinded in my eye probably taught me the greatest lessons, in my life, because it's amazing how people are with you when you're up, but man, don't be down. They'll turn on you in a heartbeat. And you have to know the difference as a young man or even woman, growing up. People who are with you that are genuinely with you will be with you when you're in the gutter, and they'll be with you when you're on top of the mountain.
That's right.
They're not going to go nowhere.
Yeah. And let me say this, this is interactive. So if you got any comments or questions, just put them in the chat, and Jim's here to answer some of those questions or read those comments. And as we digress for a moment, I want to talk real quickly about family today, right? Your lovely wife and family. And we're going to spend a moment, and then we're going to get into this quick, rest of your career here. But,
wow, I got more.
Yeah. So talk about your wife and talk about the family. Currently, you talk about family in the past, but now we talk about present.
You know what, Lowe's, man? That's the joy of my life is my family. And, my wife, I met in my church that I was going to, Mount Carmel Baptist Church. And as God would have it, I was in a relationship with someone for 9 years. And we were playing house, meaning I was living with her, or we were living together out in Queens. But for whatever reason, God would not allow me to fix my mouth to ask her to marry me. And we thought we were madly in love with each other. But she went to visit a friend in Atlanta and loved the place so much, she decided that she wanted to stay there and tried to get me to come there. And I was resistant for a while, but then I decided I was going to go. And I had a son by my first marriage. And I was raising him, and he was with me. I didn't want to pull him out of school. So I said, when school is out, we were going to come. But then I get this call that she needed some time and some space. So my heart was broken. And so for 3 years, I was in a very dark place relationally. Now, one Sunday, I was sitting in church, and I was youth director at Mount Carmel Baptist Church at that time. And she had been in that same church for years. And I was born in the church. So there was nobody in there, at least I thought there was nobody in there that I didn't know. But one Sunday, I was sitting in the pew, and I turned and looked to my right, and she was just standing there. And I was sitting next to another female friend of mine that, we went to church together. And I said, holy, who is that? That's Pearlie Goodman. I said, well, where'd she come from? And the person said, Jim, she been here the whole time. Where you been? I said, well, why I never saw her? And so I found out that she worked with our youth choir. And it was in the winter, and we were the youth church was about to have a big Christmas program. So I said, now, and I was kind of shy. I've always been kind of shy when it came to women. And so I said, well, how am I going to talk to her? And I said, oh, I know how. I asked her to help me with the Christmas program with the choir. And so I went one day. I said, I'm not in. She said, yes, I know who. I know you. She didn't know anything about my professional basketball career. Nothing. That's another thing that struck me. And so I said, we're going to have this Christmas program. I love it if the choir could sing and you could assist me. And she said, well, sure, I wouldn't mind. I said, well, I'll tell you what, do you have a number? If you give me a phone number,
smooth. Smooth operator.
She said, sure, I'll give you the number. So she gave me the phone number, and that was that. I mean, when she gave me the number, man, I jumped on that. And of course, the first couple of times I called her, although I already knew what I was going to do for the Christmas program. But what I did was we talked about the program, and then we started getting personal, and I started talking about, well, what are you doing? What are you and one thing led to another, man. And for 6 months, Lowe's, we talked and this does not happen in society today, but for 6 months, man, we talked on the phone almost every day for hours and never went out for a date.
Wow.
And Christmas came and went, had a great Christmas program. And now it was somewhere around Valentine's Day. And I said, well, come on, why don't we just go out? And so I took her out downtown to this jazz club in the city on the west side. And everything was like magic, man. I mean, you know how some relationships, you got to work really, really hard. That was really easy. And I think what made it so easy was the fact that we talked for 6 months before we ever went out on a date. So we got to know each other.
Wow.
Those are my babies there. So that's my granddaughter, Beyonce. She's in med school. The one I'm hugging is David Jr. He's now at Rhode Island playing basketball in his second year in college.
Wow.
And the little one is at his first year in high school now. And on my left is my daughter, Donica, and her husband, who's one of the most successful Black men in business in the country. And of course, on my right is my lovely wife, Pearl. And it was an easy hookup. My son, Jim, I had by my first marriage. She had a first marriage that did not work out, and she had a very young Donica, the young lady up at the top of the stairs on the left. She was a very, very, very young. In fact, her daughter and my son were the same age. So we kind of merged two families. She became my son's mother had passed. So she became a mother to my son, and I became a father to her daughter. And we merged each of the two families, man. And then, 26 years ago, this past November, we decided we wanted to get married. And, I set up this wonderful date and bought this big fat diamond. And, we up in Massachusetts somewhere at one of the top of the line Marriott's. And, I'm going to pop the question to her. And I did. And Lowe's, she broke literally, man. You know how when somebody, you get disappointed, but you can't really show you disappointed. And she said, if you don't mind, could you just give me some time to think about that? And Lowe's, my heart just like went. We were on the top floor. My heart went all the way down into the basement, man. in that hotel, man. I was like, oh snap, because I was just expecting her to get excited and say yes, and whatever comes with that, process. And when she said she needed more time to think about that, I said, oh my God. So almost a year passed.
Wow, a year?
Almost. And it was a while. And she was she was planning to say yes to me when we was out at a date, again on Valentine's Day. And right before she was about to speak and say what she was going to say, my phone rings. My cell phone rings, and I answer the phone. And it killed the whole mood. And so she didn't answer me on that night, man. And I had to wait about another month before she said yes. I said, girl, I played against the greatest players in the world. I ain't never had to work this hard for nothing. But you know what? It was worth it, man. 26 years later, we're still so happily married. I can honestly say, man, that and in life and marriages, like anything else, you have your moments of ups and downs. But I would honestly say that we've never had conflict in our marriage to the point where one ever even imagined or thought of leaving the other one, or go sleep on the couch or something like that. Stop it, Patrice. But we've never had that kind of a disagreement where we would separate from one another, man. We made a vow to each other when we first decided to get married, that number one, we were never going to argue to the point that we slept apart. Number two, we were never going to allow money to affect our marriage. Because money is like one of the main reasons why marriages don't work, and obviously infidelity was never going to be an issue in our marriage. And so we have stuck to those vows that we made to each other, man, and it has actually worked. And I think part of the problem was that the other thing that has made our marriage work is that I don't have anything by myself. Everything that I have belongs to my wife. And everything my wife has belongs to me. So we took the passage of scripture in the Bible where the twain shall become one. We took that very, very seriously. So we share in everything, and I have no, dark secrets, and she has no dark secrets. When something impacts my life or something's going on with me, I tell her. I'll give you an example. When I was in Africa, they made me a king of development in Ghana. All right, and this whole ritualistic ceremony, like coming to America, and because we had done a lot of work there. And little did I know, I was with Bishop Hassel. He was with me. He goes with me every time I travel overseas. And there was a young lady that was a part of the ceremony that was following me around all night long. And I kept saying to Bishop Hassel, man, why is that young girl following me around everywhere I go? And he said, Jim, I don't know, but it seems awful strange. So finally they had the actual ceremony, and they had the chair set up, my chair, his chair, and then they put another chair in front of me, and she sits in front of me. So now I'm saying, no, I gotta. This is too awkward. So I went to the king and I said, King, with all due respect, who is that young lady that's sitting in front of me? He says, oh, that's your wife. I said, what? He said, that's your wife. As part of the ceremony, you get to have a wife. I said, listen, I ain't gonna say it because I'm on your podcast and I'm a pastor now. But let's just say I said some choice words that meant no, that we ain't going out like that. And listen, my wife will not take a flight over, say, 5 or 6 hours. She did not. She just refused. She ain't doing it. So I wasn't worried about my wife ever coming over there. Or for that matter, ever even finding out about that. But that was the very first thing, because of the kind of relationship we have, that was the very first thing I told her. I picked up the phone as soon as we got back to the hotel, and I told my wife exactly what had happened, because I don't believe in having secrets from my wife and vice versa, no matter what it is, and no matter how compromising it may appear to be for you. It's best that you're fully honest and transparent, because that's how you keep your marriage going strong, when each other is like that. And I don't have to worry when my wife says I'm going out with her girlfriends. I don't even think about what they're doing. It doesn't even faze me. And when I go out with the fellas, which is very rare, because I'm always doing this or that or the other, but when I do, it doesn't faze my wife, because we're completely and honestly open with each other. And that's what has allowed us to survive. And so her daughter is my daughter. I mean, it's the same as if I helped birth the baby. And my son, although he's deceased now, was her son when he was alive. And, my daughter's two sons are my grandchildren. I mean, they don't know any other pop but me. So, and my granddaughter from my son, Beyonce, is her granddaughter. and we have a very, very, very close relationship like that. And, God will send you exactly who you need for what he needs you to do,
That's right.
and that's what he did with my wife. He would not allow me to say yes or to ask this other lady who I was involved with, because the path that he was leading me on, she would not have been conducive for me. But my wife, that I have, Pearl, she is the perfect partner for me.
Awesome.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. I think that was awesome. And Teresa was up there saying yes, Pearl. And
yeah, I saw that.
and my mom said hello and congratulations. I think
Oh, tell her
she was up there too.
Yes.
So she probably can hear you. She's probably listening right now.
God bless you. How are you?
And so we only got a few more minutes here, but man, I had a lot of pictures, man. So I got some basketball pictures, and me and Jim, I don't know if you guys know that Jim and I, right? We played in 4th Street Playground together.
Oh yeah.
Right. When Millbank tried to come with a crew.
Oh, forget about it.
Man, we said, man, let's go get Jim, man. You want to win? Let's go get Jim, man. And then we played in USBL together.
Yeah.
The Westchester Golden Apples. That's when you see Spud Webb, Nancy Lieberman, playing in this upstart league called the USBL. We were on the Golden Apples together, right? And that was a good time. It was a good summer, It was a good time, man. Oh man, and I enjoyed playing with you, man. We had a great time, and
we did.
And we share some things in common. Like I was at the Boys and Girls Club. You at the Nepperhan Community Center. I think we got some pictures on the Nepperhan Community Center that you end up being there for how long?
I was there for 28 years.
Yeah, and I was at the Boys and Girls Club for 27.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah, and from all the wonderful things that you did, some things in the community with the Peacekeepers, my brother's keepers, all those wonderful programs. Man, I was able to take part in a lot of. There's the President Bill Clinton. Jim, fantastic career, man. Amazing career, man. And then, started to help out when I think they had the earthquake in Haiti. You guys started to build relationships there, take down the things that they needed to Haiti, and didn't end up. I guess you guys started a church there, help build some buildings there. Man, quickly talk about, man, Nepperhan Community Center, all those things that God allowed, open the door for you.
It's amazing. When I started 28 years ago, it was a very small agency, but it was certainly the center of focus in our community, but I realized that there was so much more that the agency could be. So I began to set out to kind of grow the agency in terms of the scope of programs and services that we ran. And so we went from about 5 or 6 programs to over 21, probably 25 different programs at one time. And we had basically programs that addressed every issue that negatively impacted our children and their families. Our motto was, when I got there, I changed our motto to empowering children and families. We wanted to help make families self-sufficient and not dependent upon governmental systems for their survival, because you can see just by the administration that's now in power in Congress, they want to cut essential services, and you don't ever want to be in a position where you're so dependent on those services that without them, you can't survive. So we wanted to help families become self-sufficient so they would never be in that kind of a situation. So our programs and services were geared toward self-sufficiency, geared toward helping our young people further their education. We did, the best program that we ran for that, as it relates to males anyway, was My Brother's Keeper. We went from almost 59% graduation rate with young men of color to a 91% graduation rate within 3 years because of the My Brother's Keeper program in the whole city of Yonkers. That's a remarkable statistic. And so we were able to incorporate programs like My Brother's Keeper. I started the Violence and Gang Prevention Coalition. Yonkers at one point had the worst gang problem of any city on the East Coast for about a period of 3 or 4 years. We started the Violence and Gang Prevention Coalition. We met with a number of the OGs in pretty compromising situations. We were able to negotiate peace treaties between several of the rival gangs. We were proud of that. We started what we call the Gateway After School Academies, which were after school academies in pretty much all of the high schools in Yonkers. Thousands of kids were a part of that Gateway After School Academies. We started drum corps that toured the New York metropolitan area. We started gospel choirs that toured the New York metropolitan area. We had risky behavior programs, sex prevention, all of those kind of things. We incorporated programs for our seniors. We took our kids on trips to Black colleges on a regular. We wanted to just change the mindset of the agency. We have been able to, when I got there, I changed the sign that said, Nepperhan Community Center is not an agency, it's a ministry. And so, because I wanted people to get it in their mind that we were there to serve in the service. And so that's what we did. And, we renovated the interior of the building. We had plans prior to me leaving of renovating the downstairs. We built a basketball court on the outside of the building where we was the home of Midnight Basketball, which turned out to be one of the bigger leagues in the New York metropolitan area. And then we had our Dr. King dinner every year that we sponsored, and it just got bigger and bigger to almost 1,000 people were coming to the dinner. And one of the dinners we met a king from Ghana. Was here visiting a friend, and the friend brought him to the dinner, introduced him to us. We became really good friends, and he extended an invitation to us to go overseas and to implement the Gateway Academies, the after-school programs that we have here over there, because they don't have after-school programs in Africa. So I told him we would if he could open up the door for us to come, and he did. And so we went over, and as time would have it, Africa is an interesting continent, because when you're doing a work in one of the countries there, somehow everybody else in the whole continent finds out about it. So we started getting invitations from Tanzania, from Lusaka, Zambia, from Burkina Faso, from Benin, from the Ivory Coast. And so we ended up going to each of those countries and getting some NGOs, non-governmental organization status from the United Nations to do business over in Africa. And we opened a school in Cote d'Ivoire, which is on the Ivory Coast of Africa. It's called the Nepperhan Community Center School of Excellence, which is still there. We opened up a center in Ghana, and we're working on a school over there in Ghana. We built 2 facilities in Burkina Faso. We opened up a center down in Lusaka, Zambia, and we invested in a hospital which is being built now in Zambia, that we invested in, heavily invested in. And in Tanzania, we have a youth center over there as well. So that was named after our agency. And so we have Nepperhan Community Centers, little centers all over the continent of Africa that we're very, very proud of. And then we do that work by day, and by night, of course, we do ministry. So we do convocations and revivals every time we go over there. Each of the cities, each of the countries that we are in, we partnered with a church because I felt most comfortable dealing with pastors than people, other, So, and as a result of that, we were invited to speak at a lot of their churches, and we've developed a great relationship that way, and they look forward to us coming every year, and we look forward to going. And so now that I've left Nepperhan, I'll still be going back. And so we put Nepperhan on a map, both nationally through the My Brother's Keeper program. We had an opportunity to meet with President Obama on a few occasions, and his top people. In fact, his top leader spoke at my Dr. King dinner. So we had a good run at the Nepperhan Community Center, and now that I'm pastoring my own church, I felt like it was the right time to pass the torch and to redirect my focus and attention on building my church. I'm not going to stop my community service and work in the community, but my focus is going to be on building the church.
So if you don't mind, just in case somebody wanted to attend and get involved, give us the church information.
So the name of the church is the New Beginnings International House of Worship. Right now, I am looking for a permanent home for our church. So we are operating out of the Castle Royale Catering Hall, which is on 92 Waverly Street in Yonkers, literally across the street from Mount Carmel Baptist Church that I grew up in. And it's at 11 o'clock every Sunday morning. We do our Bible study on Wednesday nights on Zoom. And so, we're excited about what God is doing, through our ministry. And we just continue to strive forward. We're never going to stop the work of service to our community, to the people in our community. But we just have shifted our venues from the Nepperhan Community Center to the New Beginnings International House of Worship.
Yeah. And there it goes right there. The address and the information is right there on the screen. And so it's 90 Waverly Street, Yonkers, New York.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also
you coming over to preach, by the way, one Sunday. I just want to let you know that. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Who was it? And he's Dr. Jim Bostic, right? Got his doctorate, man, got his degree, got his doctorate. And check that out, man. Congratulations on me coming Dr. Bostic, and also, man, hey, he got a book out too. So you got to make sure that we, if you're looking for a good book, I'm a book guy. Build your library up, man. We got the Daily Word of Encouragement to Live by Dr. Jim Bostic. Man, where can they get it? Where can they get the book?
So they can get that at Amazon.com. They could get it at Barnes and Nobles. They can get it at Westbow Press.
Okay,
those three venues, yeah. Or I believe they can go to my website. www.jimbostic.net. And they could secure it there as well.
Awesome, man. Well, I do appreciate you taking the time out your busy schedule and jumping on here.
Come on, man.
We didn't even get into some more basketball and stuff like the Rucker Park and all that kind of stuff. I got all kind of information on that, but we may have to do that again. We got all this basketball stuff. Look at that. You got all this basketball stuff here. And I guess, Jim, I want to say thank you, man. Just hold on for a moment, man, while I close out. I want to show this quick video of you, and I want to thank everybody for coming on, and love you guys. And remember what I said, man. If you wake up tomorrow, make tomorrow your masterpiece. That's from the good master, the coach, my favorite coach, John Wooden. Right.
Amen.
Make every day a masterpiece. So
Amen.
You're going to check this out, and then we're going to close out, and I'll see you next week. Super Bowl week, 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. next Sunday.
Amen. I played against, Doc Irving and George McGinnis and Dave Thompson and Wes Unseld and Dave Cowens and, many of the legends of the NBA. And of course, in the Holcomb Rucker tournament, we played there against Doc as well, but we played against Tiny Archibald and during that era, people like Pat Cummings and Louis Orr and World Be Free and, legends of the Rucker such as Carlton Green Moto, Joe Hammond.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of Lowe's More, the Blueprint Podcast. Stay connected and follow us at our website, www.lowesmore.com. That's LOWESMOORE.com. You can also join the discussion on Twitter at Lowe's More and on Facebook at Lowe's More Jr. As always, thank you for pushing your mindset towards a better reality. This concludes the most thought-provoking portion of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast to stay fully up to date with everything we're up to. Until next time, be kind to yourself and each other.
What they teaching is a joke. I ain't buying it like I'm broke. Insufficient funds for insignificant.